Good morning and welcome to OT Investigates, a subsidiary branch of the rampantly successful Hobby Breakfast podcast. In this series, each fortnight or each week, depending on when I can be bothered, I'm going to attempt to answer one question. Now, I'm mainly going to focus on SBG because that's where my interest lies, but it also may extend to wider hobby, Lord of the Rings, 40k, Games Workshop, whatever takes our fancy. It's not always just going to be me. There will be whatever guests I can corral, beg or bribe to be on here, but this week it is just me. And I've picked something that I was really quite interested in and I thought would be a really good place to start. It is the top 5 list that you would suggest to a complete beginner to SBG. Now, there's going to be a few things I'm going to be judging them on. I'm going to be looking at how easy they are to sort of learn/use. Now, this doesn't mean the army lists are easy to use at the top end in terms of competitive play. It doesn't mean you're a noob if you play them. It doesn't mean I hate you. It just means that can you pick them up and could you play a relatively good game with them? The next thing I'm going to be looking at is collecting. So that's going to cover lots of things. It's going to cover how easy they are to get hold of. Are the models in production? Are they all in, logical box sets, things like that? And it's also going to look a little bit at cost as well, because I think that is a big benefit to some of these armies. And the final thing we're going to look at is, how easy they are to paint and whether or not they give you sort of access to more advanced painting techniques as well that you could maybe have a go at, or maybe they're all just really straightforward. Now, before I did this video, I put it to you good folks out there, shout out to the subscribers, and it was really interesting to see what you guys thought, because it wasn't what I had anticipated at all. It ended up actually with Gondor winning pretty handsomely, with Isengard, Dead of Dunharrow in behind, Mordor and Army of Thror. Now, maybe people like Rohan, but I didn't put that one in there. So first and foremost, we're going to look at the Army of Thror, and this is going to be my sort of number 5 recommendation. Why is it good? It is one of the most affordable armies out there. All of your troops, including your quite elite Grim Hammers or the Kingsguard if you upgrade them, come in a nice plastic box set. You get 24 for that £32, which they are now. And your Warriors of Erebor, which aren't the best sculpts in the world, but are also in that nice plastic box. You also get some nice twin packs with the heroes and even a triple pack with Balin, Thorin and Dwalin. They're, as with all dwarves, high fight and defense make them really forgiving to learn. Like, one of the armies I ran first was Khazad-dûm, just because it had that really solid and nice stats. And those troops super easy to paint. Like, you can do the Grim Hammers in pretty much 2 or 3 colours, some silver, a bit of brown for the beards, and any boots and stuff like that you want to colour up. So moving on to the next one, we've got Isengard, and this one was a little bit more controversial because I've knocked this one down because I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's clear that there is a bit of support for it out there, and having talked to Mayor, he was very much in favour of this one as well. What makes Isengard good? You've got super powerful troops, like super solid, high defense, high strength, high fight, really nice troops in there. And some really nice heroes as well. Some nice solid mid-range heroes, and you've got Saruman at the top end as well, who's one of the best spellcasters in the game. Leading into those heroes, you can take so many iconic characters in the list. You've got Lurtz, Mahur, obviously Saruman, Grima, and yeah, that just makes the list a bit more interesting, a bit more themey if that's what you're into. And one thing when I talked to Mayor about this a while ago is that the painting can be kind of as hard as you want it to be. If you just want to bash them out to a tabletop standard, you can do that. But if you want to go into that details, all the white hands on the shield and putting them on the face of the Uruk-hai and stuff like that, you can do that as well. So yeah, a really solid list there from Isengard. And crucially, you can probably spot in the top right corner, they get that nice battle host box. Now, they're not always a must-buy because they might not have exactly what you're looking for. But if you're looking to start an army, really good place to start, and you do get a bit of value for money, which is really nice these days. Moving on to Mordor, which is going to be my 3rd choice. Why is Mordor good? It's so versatile. Because they have such a broad variety of troops and heroes, right the way from sort of down at the lowest points, you're going to play, 250, 300, all the way up to, 1,000 plus, you can build a really solid army. And as part of that, you get these amazing sort of iconic heroes, your Gothmogs, your Witch Kings, those big heroes that you're going to remember from the films, and access to a whole load of wraiths as well, which is really cool if you're into that. Unfortunately, and it depends on how you view this, I kind of put it in as a negative and a positive. They're pretty easy to paint. It's likely you might be churning out a lot of orcs. Obviously, you don't have to. It may get a little bit repetitive, but actually, There's nothing in here that's going to be super challenging to paint, again, up to that tabletop standard, which is really nice. In second place, and this is a bit controversial because it was the ones people voted at the top, but I've made my decision otherwise, and I obviously know better. They're just Mordor, but for the good guys, and you do get some nicer stuff in there, and that's no simplification. But Gondor's super versatile, loads of varieties of troops, some really nice heroes. You got your mid-range hitters like your Húrin and Faramir, people like that, all the way up to, you know, the biggest heroes in the game, Boromir with that banner, Aragorn, Gandalf, all across the board, great heroes. And again, you're gonna have to paint probably a lot of troops, which might be a bit repetitive, but they should be fairly easy once you get into the swing of it. And again, they have this battle host box, which is really nice. Slight disadvantage with this one is, even though you get quite a few points in it, a lot of them are tied up in Gandalf and Pippin, who you may not want to run in your army, depending on, you know, how you feel about those heroes. Possibly not the most meta heroes in the game. I feel I have to put this one in. I'm going to do an honourable mention for Rohan, because it's clear there's a lot of love out there for Rohan. What makes Rohan good? As you'd expect, really good cavalry, solid heroes, some really nice... Those mounted heroes for Rohan can be brutal. And again, similar to the previous two, you can kind of make it work at all points levels. Really low points levels, you can take Theoden and just a few guys, and you can go all the way up with your Dernhelms and your Gamlings and people like that to really make the list tick at higher points. Feeding into that, again, I've thrown out those names. Some really iconic characters, and especially some of the moments I think of in the films do come from those Rohirrim, the charge at Helm's Deep and things like that. So yeah, really nice iconic moments from the films. And more so than the rest of the ones I'm going to talk about today, it does teach you sort of maybe more about the game mechanics as a whole, because you're going to see a lot of things like throwing weapons. You're going to be dealing with a lot of cavalry, which again is a positive or a negative. It's a lot more to learn, but it will teach you more about the game. And if you view that as positive, that's great. If you prefer to stick with maybe a simpler infantry army, that's fair enough. Now, my top choice, and this is going to be slightly controversial, but I think I can explain it, is the Dead of Dunharrow. It's not the it doesn't have the most variety to it necessarily, but as a starter list, if you want to put an army on the table and you just want to go and wreck some fools, this is where you need to start. Dead of Dunharrow is excellent. In terms of value, it's superb because your troops are so elite and so expensive. You know, you can be paying 15, 16 points for a basic guy, and they come in that really nice plastic box set. You're getting so much for your money. The Rise of the Dead are a metal skull, which is a bit weird, and maybe you need a couple of them. But yeah, aside from that, it's really good. In terms of playstyle, this is kind of dwarves, but, you know, with a bit more, because they all have terror, and they have this really cool rule where they wound against an opponent's wound against an opponent's courage rather than against their defense. So super solid, and they will kind of make up for any mistakes you do make in terms of positioning, because they are just so tough, and every model in your army causes terror. Finally, me and Mayor took this to a tournament recently, and he said he had to bash a few of the guys last minute, and he said these are the simplest models to make, because you can almost do them with two colours if you really want to. You've got that basic sort of green shade on the base, and then you genuinely just need to do a really light dry brush of white over the top, and that can kind of get them again up to tabletop standard, which is really good. So if you want a really sort of solid army that's going to be nice and affordable, I don't think you can go wrong with Dead of Dunharrow. And that's the video done for today. Thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed it and you want to come back for more, I imagine hopefully you're already subscribed. You've not just come here for this, but if you're not already subscribed, drop us a subscribe, like the video.